Hello, and welcome to the video, hopefully first in a series going forward. Today's topic is one that's close to my heart, as an avid fan of content from books to movies. However, this will probably spark some controversy, and hit you somewhere in your opinion. So, for today's topic, we have, your writing isn't good. Now that the clickbait is out of the way, and 3 people with about 100 bots will scream down in the comments, let's move on to the meat of the video. Alright, to get started, we have 5 points to go over really quick. That'll be the overall arching theme of what we're going over. The first topic at hand, number 1, while you might have good work, you probably aren't doing the best you can do. Number 2, your fan fiction isn't good, so please stop doing it. Number 3, you need to understand a topic to be able to talk about it. And number 4, writing takes effort, so you don't throw away ideas just because you don't like them. Number 5, please touch some grass. Alright, so to get started with point 1 here, we have a couple things to go over. Number 1, I'm doing this video as a more open-ended response to this kind of topic, partially with just some bullet points written down to be able to guide me in the general direction of what we're talking about. So those points that I made earlier with the 5 topics will go into a little more depth and detail. So starting with number 1, part of what I'm talking about here is you need to be able to be your worst critic and your biggest supporter. In doing so, you have the capability as a writer to be better than what you think you're doing. You absolutely might have some really good work that you put out there, but the best thing you can do is know that you can do better. You should always have that meat and drive to be able to go forward. And that motivation is what keeps you always seeking a better product, not only for the people who will read it, but for yourself. And if you don't think you have the capability to do that, then maybe you should do a little soul searching for it. I absolutely highly recommend the idea of being able to take a break and spend some time working on the things that you want to be able to work on. One of the biggest issues that I run into is that people will think that they have a good product, they're going the right direction, but they don't seek to innovate anything of what they're doing. They don't want to take something new in with doing it, which will come back around a little bit later on one of the other topic points. Part of this understanding, though, is that your best is only what people say is your best. You'll never be the person to determine what it is. You may think that a certain piece of work is your favorite, or that you did the most work on, or that you really put in the effort for, but at the end of the day, only other people can judge your work. The other part is that to be able to make a large project work, especially when you're putting in a lot of time and effort, I highly recommend that you spend some time doing smaller projects over the course of a long period to be able to inform yourself about how your writing style is, the way that you put effort into it, how you can make yourself more effective. There's plenty that goes into what you're doing that you have to pay attention to, and it's important that you put in the work in understanding that. So starting with small projects, little writing techniques, smaller blurbs, whatever it may be, and then moving on to your larger projects such as novels, light series, whatever it may be. These are the important things that you have to keep in mind when I say the fact that you might have good work, but there's always something that can make it better. And that you aren't doing your best until you're pushing yourself to do your best. So let's go ahead and move on to point 2. Your fan fiction isn't good, and you should stop doing it. Okay, so this is probably the one that's going to piss the most people off, because what I'm saying is probably not what you're thinking. I'm just baiting you. And it's pretty easy to do for this reason, and tells a little bit about part of the reason why you're upset. The difference that I'm talking about here is being able to say that you know the difference between writing a fan fiction of something that you like and being able to say that you've only drawn inspiration from something. A lot of times when people say that they've drawn inspiration from something, they end up just writing a piece of fan fiction. There's a lot of topics that we could talk about with this in particular, but probably the biggest ones have to be stuff that already are considered fan fiction, for instance. Let's talk about the fact that Twilight is simply a fan fiction of Harry Potter. It's a simple analysis on this, but there are other pieces of writing that you could probably think of right about now, and may have also been in the thumbnail of this video, that will give you an indicator as to the understanding between drawing inspiration from something and being able to say that it's a piece of fan fiction. You need to be able to learn to find the core elements of a piece of work that you like and understand what those core elements are. Not just, oh, I'm writing about a hero and protagonist, not just I'm being able to do this, that, or the other thing. You know the tropes of something, but to be able to understand the core beats of a given story that makes it work, and being able to adapt that in a way that functionally becomes your own. Those are the important efforts that a lot of people don't tend to make. And part of this is not to skip on checking your work against your inspirations to make sure you haven't created a piece of fan fiction, that you're not following something too similarly, that you're not doing something that's already been done and you're simply ripping off of that what you really like about it without actually adding any genuine content to it. And for the love of God, practice your damn skills. Do small projects. It's a reiteration from the first point, but it's important for you to remember that you have to be able to practice your writing. And if you don't practice your writing, just like any other skill, it'll get rusty, you'll get worse at it, and you will end up creating a piece of bad work for that reason. Alright, now we're moving on to point number 3. Understanding a topic is necessary to be able to talk about it. So, part of what I mean in this is that research is key and experience is king. This is a simple concept of the fact that you need to be able to research a topic that you are talking about in terms of your writing aspect, whether it's a screenplay for a movie, the story to a novel, to anything that you're doing whatsoever, even if it's something as simple as a technical paper. You need to know what you are talking about by doing the research. But even better than that, especially when you're writing a piece of fiction, you need to be able to experience the things possible in that fiction to the closest proximity you can in order to effectively be able to distribute the information. So, if you're going to be writing about any sort of medieval violence or a concept similar to such, you need to do the research that goes into it and try and get the closest level of experience in terms of understanding those topics. That is an integral part of being able to write a good piece of work, is experience. Now, you might be saying to yourself right now, well, that sounds really dumb. How can I experience a sci-fi fantasy if we don't live in that far-flung future? Well, the simplest answer to that is you can't. But you can sure as hell put the effort in to being able to research the things around it and to be able to understand as much as possible about the science, about the topic, about the implications of what makes a good sci-fi by reading other pieces of literature and work that are successful in that field. And part of that is that you have to be a devil in the details. When you are writing a piece of work, the thing that somebody's going to pick apart the most is your details. This doesn't mean that you have to be only details. It means that you have to have solid details, meaningful ones, things that represent and are put in there with a purpose in mind, and not just some reason to put something in there. In addition to this, logic will trump all of your desires when you're making a piece of content. Logic is the thing that everybody needs to be able to function in any given story, any given topic. Logic is a thing that is, respectively, the most important part of being able to tell a cohesive story. Now, again, you might be saying to yourself, that makes no sense, I'm writing fiction. I'm writing something that isn't real. I can ignore logic. To some sense, you can, but only if you wrote in a logical reason for it to be ignored. If you start to willy-nilly remove the context between things and say that I can do whatever I want because I can do whatever I want, you then remove the idea and ability to be able to take your world seriously. You remove the idea and ability for anything to have meaning in your world because you're not giving it meaning. You are just simply saying it is because it is, which is not really a good thing. At the end of the day, you can never ignore information. You can't just say, well, I don't like that. You have to understand that if something is integral or important to the concept of what's going on, you have to give it some credence. If you don't, then you're ignoring the value that something has in a given situation. Now, this kind of goes into the last point, which is you don't have to like it, but you have to respect what made it good. In doing your research about any given topic, especially when it comes to writing, you have to understand that you have to respect the material it's coming from. You can't just say, well, I don't like that. It doesn't seem good to me. It's like, well, you have to understand why it was good in the first place to other people, why anything became successful in any given area. By understanding that, you can then say, well, maybe I can do it better by doing it differently. But until you do so, you have no reason to say anything else. You have no context in which you should be presenting something, because you haven't done the research, so nobody should take you seriously at that point. And it goes to show in your writing when you do so, especially when we look at more recent topics as of late in terms of the things that are out there at the moment. Okie dokie, so now we're on to part 4 of these topics, which is that your writing takes effort and that you shouldn't shove off ideas just because you don't like them. This is probably one that is going to piss a lot of you off, especially those of you who think that, like, The Last Jedi was a good movie. You use everything. You don't put down your pen for anything. You use every little detail and piece of work and literature. You judge it only by the meaning that it gives, not by the content of what other people talk about it. It has nothing to do with what the topic is itself. It has to do with the value that it brings to the table in terms of what you are talking about. It's important to understand that difference wholeheartedly, because if you don't, then you're not going to realize that there's a problem when you say to somebody, hey, I don't like this piece of content for any given reason, other than it's not a good piece of content, it's not relevant, it doesn't give anything to my story. But you have to be able to say that to somebody first, and know that you know that. If you just simply say, I don't like it for blah 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 reason, without justifying the reasoning behind that with a actual clear and concise context, you're wasting your writing talents. You are wasting your ability to write. You aren't doing anything. And in doing this, you should be able to take popular hot topics and understand them whether you like them or not. There should be a complete and concise detailing between those to be able to play devil's advocate in any given topic and know the other side of your argument. And in doing this, you have to understand and realize that there are tropes in real life as well as in stories. And there are reasons for that, because these are things that actually happen. But you have to also understand they are generally exceptions and not the rule. And the lack of love in your writing, you should change your sails, not scuttle your ship. If you feel that you don't have a love or passion in your writing, you need to change direction. You need to change course. Don't scuttle your ship by writing trash content. If you feel your heart is not in a topic necessarily, take a break and do smaller projects in order to get back to the bigger ones. If you feel you've hit a writer's block somewhere and that you're really struggling to get through, you have to be able to stop, think, and realize something about your writing that is not making it fun anymore. If you're writing something that is upsetting to you or difficult to write, take your time with it. But be able to write something that is meaningful. There's no right or wrong way to do any of this, but there is a wrong thing you can do in your writing. You can write poorly, and you cannot give your best effort. And that's something that is truly the wrong part of what you might be doing. Don't ignore things. Be able to explore a topic completely and understand it from both sides and angles, from every opinion. Be able to know something wholeheartedly from both the points you agree with and the points you disagree with, and understand why they exist on either side. Okay, so we're on to our last and final point, which is probably the dumbest one I'm going to make out of this entire video, which is touch some grass. This is a remark that gets tossed around constantly to people. Go touch some grass, go outside, live some life, be able to have experiences. And to be frank, they're right. You need to have life experience to be able to write about stuff. But most of the time, the people who are saying go touch some grass usually are the people who should be going to touch some grass. Constantly being online and talking to people is not necessarily healthy for you in any way, shape, or form. But it's also incredibly unhelpful to your writing capabilities. In order to write well, you need life experience. You need the ability to live life in order to write more beautifully. Because context of experience is something that shapes your words more effectively than any amount of research will ever do. And that came back to part of our other points, which is research is key, but experience is king. And I want to reiterate that you can do better, and you will if you put effort in. Part of the touching grass comment is that if you do so, you will write better. You will be able to do something more inspirational, have more depth in your writing, and have the ability to move forward in your writing in a way that makes you feel better about it, and people will enjoy more. You also need to be a friendly competitive in that space too. Build rivalries with people by being competitive in a way that helps to foster better outcomes. Don't be an enemy, be a rival. So part of what I also wanted to talk about at the end of this here is that the reason I'm making this video is that nowadays there's a lot of hatred and vitriol that sits online around content creation and about the current state of affairs in art and creative content. The reason why I kind of wanted to make this video is in reference to Critical Drinker's video, Chris Gore's interview, and a video by Thoughty2 as well. Just talking about the poor state of media, the poor state of writing, why the mediocrity exists today. And those are excellent videos that you should go check out to be able to have some more context and understanding of where I'm coming from in making this. But to conclude a lot of this, you are a reflection of your writing. And not in your content, but what comes over from it as a person. You are reflective of what you write in the quality that you present. It's important to understand that difference. Just because you're writing about dark topics or a difficult situation doesn't mean that you are a bad person. It means that if you put effort into those things, you care about what you're doing. It's got nothing to do with the content itself, it's got everything to do with the characterization of your writing, the effort you put into it, the willingness to go further and beyond. And it's sad to see today so much media that is awful, trash, mediocrity, stuff that didn't have effort put in, that was just a quick cash grab, or even worse, a literal incitement to make people mad and upset and to destroy content that people loved and enjoyed and found passion and deep happiness from. It's important to recognize today that there are better ways we can do things and that you need to take it to heart and make better content. Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of the video here. I wanted to thank everybody who joined us today, and I hope you enjoyed the content of the topic. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or coconuts, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments. It helps to boost the video, and go ahead and leave a like, and if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more of it, go ahead and subscribe. My name has been Argos Raid, and I hope you enjoyed the topic.